Transhumanism is an old idea made new with current technologies. Yet now, many people are very interested in transhumanism and what it means for our society as a whole. Many futurists see themselves as helping the world, and yet their ethos is based on disruption. Sounds a lot like order out of chaos to me. Transhumanism offers solutions to the natural order of the world. In other words, as a philosophy, it is against entropy, the ephemeral, and mortality. So what is transhumanism? Where did it come from? Who are some of the key futurists involved in hyping an ultimately anti-human ethos? Let's start where I started, Ray Kurzweil. I was handed a copy of The Age of Spiritual Machines around 2006 by a coworker at Whole Foods. We worked in produce. At the time, it seemed like an interesting idea. Do machines have souls? What is a spiritual machine? I only really knew of Kurzweil and his predictions about the singularity, or when man would finally merge with machines. Knowing more about transhumanism, I now find the title only a little ironic. Perhaps what Kurzweil is saying here is that humans are machines. This is how the transhumanist views humanity. Flawed machines at best. Humanity is lacking. We have flaws in physical bodies. We get old. We die. The body is imperfect and must constantly be improved upon with technology. As Elon Musk says, we're already a cyborg. The idea that man is a machine is very closely related to the Nietzschean idea of the Übermensch, which the Nazis later co-opted. But the modern term transhumanism was coined by none other than Julian Huxley. Huxley was one of the eugenicists of the day who took great pains to separate himself from Nazism, but methinks one doth protest too much. He really didn't like blacks and thought they were from an inferior stock. This is why we need to be specific when we talk about white supremacy. The legacy of Huxley is still unfolding. He was connected to big movers and shakers at the time, and he was involved in many eugenicist organizations. He believed in a brave new world of social control. He and his brother were key players in forming the society we see today, one obsessed with pleasure and fields like evolutionary psychology. It seems we are living out the technocratic vision that Huxley's brother Adius had in mind. As infertility rises, people will be more reliant on technologies that outsource pregnancy, starting with IVF, but eventually moving to what Adius wrote about in Brave New World. It seems that many of the chemicals released by the corporate oligarchs are affecting fertility, not to mention vaccines. From the gray zone, why won't the U.S. medical establishment believe women COVID-19 vaccines do not warn about menstrual disruption? I have 5 female friends who, after receiving COVID-19 vaccinations, experienced disruption to their menstrual cycles. Their symptoms have included hemorrhagic bleeding lasting more than a month, heavy intermittent bleeding for 4 months, passing golf ball-sized clots of blood, and extreme cramping. Serious enough to land one friend in the ER. Most of these women are in their 20s and 30s, and at least one of them thinks she might want to have children. She now worries that her symptoms might be the harbinger of long-term fertility problems. At least 2 of my friends have symptoms that have not been resolved. Other women of childbearing age have reported becoming temporarily postmenopausal after their second mRNA shot. Conversely, women in menopause are reporting suddenly beginning to bleed again. Apparently, the number of vaccinated women around the world reporting alarmingly disrupted menstruation is, to be conservative, in the tens of thousands. There is a full assault of medical, cyber, and government tyranny going on. Because it is soft and slick, it seems harder for people to recognize. These systems of control would have delighted Julian Huxley, as with the rampant desire for pleasure delight Adius. Brave New World is more a template than a critique, a vision of the future that was informed by the action of corporate oligarchs and the Huxleys' close relationships with them. These mechanisms of pleasure and detachment from reproduction are ways to subdue the population and manufacture their consent as well, and probably, eventually, humans themselves. In 1950, Herbert Wiener wrote a book entitled The Human Use of Human Beings. According to Wikipedia, the text argues for the benefits of automation to society. It analyzes the meaning of productive communication and discusses ways for humans and machines to cooperate with the potential to amplify human power. The other piece to this is, of course, the control of information. Technofascism, which is the end result of transhumanism, will usher in a greater security state and even more censorship. Who do you think this technology is for? Historically, it is for those that can afford it first, and the military. Born in 1894, Wiener was a contemporary of Huxley, born only 7 years earlier. He was a mathematician who worked at MIT. He is also the grandfather of AI, postulating that machines could learn from feedback mechanisms. We now see this all the time online, mostly in the form of censorship. Enter Google's Jigsaw. According to their own website, Jigsaw is a unit within Google that explores threats to open societies and builds technology that inspires scalable solutions. What do they mean by open societies? Open for whom? Surely not the people questioning anything outside of the mainstream. Their website features a spotlight that hovers over text to illuminate it. Jigsaw lists 4 threats: disinformation, toxicity, censorship, and violent extremism. Let's click on toxicity. This is where you'll find the Perspective AI from their sites on Perspective and Jigsaw. Perspective API uses machine learning to identify toxic language, making it easier to host better conversations online. Perspective is used to give feedback to commenters, help moderators more easily review comments, and keep conversations open online. One of Perspective API's most common uses is content moderation. Developers at platforms like Disqus and publications like the Wall Street Journal augment their existing content moderation systems with Perspective, creating custom combinations of attributes to suit the needs of their platforms. Click on their case studies to see the New York Times and Coral, which includes the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, the LA Times, USA Today, Der Spiegel, and Wired. Quote, to help moderators manage audio content at scale, the Google Cloud team combined several machine learning-based APIs, including Google's Natural Language API and Perspective API, into a pipeline which can analyze audio content and provide a corresponding tool to view the results. Jigsaw also lists Tune and Moderator. Tune is for people that want to censor the internet they see. It is a Chrome extension that helps people adjust the level of toxicity they see in comments across the internet. Speaking of things that have already been decided for society, the futurists conjuring this mess have already wedged their special interests into a federal infrastructure bill in the form of gender identity. But do not be mistaken, gender identity is a global agenda. Martine Rothblatt figures heavily into the genesis of this agenda. A 2014 New York Times Magazine article claims the following about Rothblatt. Futurist, pharma tycoon, satellite entrepreneur, philosopher, Martine Rothblatt, the highest paid female executive in America, was born male. At least in 2014 they had enough sense to write that Martine was born a man. Martine was there when the very moneyed men in dresses signed the International Bill of Gender Rights. From uncommongroundmedia.com, as a member of the International Conference on Transgender Law and Employment Policy since 1992, Rothblatt authored the first draft of the Transsexual and Transgender Health Law Reports after meeting Phyllis Fry, another transsexual lawyer in Texas. This small meeting of men with a penchant for wearing women's undergarments was the launchpad for an international project to drive transsexualism globally and deconstruct human sexual dimorphism. The document Rothblatt drafted would later be referred to as the International Bill of Gender Rights. The language found in the International Bill of Gender Rights is the same that you will see in UN documents concerning SOGI, or sexual orientation and gender identity, two things which actually have nothing to do with each other. It may look like that from the outside, but transgenderism is more of a new conversion therapy. But Martine's story doesn't start there. It seems to have started at NASA. You know how I feel about them. Let's just say if you want to lose something, you give it to NASA. According to Wikipedia, Rothblatt left college after 2 years and traveled throughout Europe, Turkey, Iran, Kenya, and the Seychelles. And it was at a NASA tracking station in the Seychelles during the summer of 1974 that he had his epiphany to unite the world via satellite communications. He then returned to the University of California, Los Angeles, graduating summa cum laude in communication studies in 1977 with a thesis on international direct broadcast satellites. Rothblatt has also made a robot to preserve the consciousness of the woman he loves in a digital file and a companion robot. In an onstage conversation with TED's Chris Anderson, Rothblatt shares his powerful story of love, identity, creativity, and limitless possibility. Where have I heard limitless possibility before? Oh yeah, that terrible Larry Wachowski speech that I featured in the clip I made about the Matrix. You see, there is a deep connection between transhumanism and transgenderism. Transgenderism is a way to normalize modifying the body. The masses already seem to believe that one can change their sex. This is one of the big lies they tell you. Nazi tactics never died. So why? They want to outsource reproduction of humans to make a Gattaca-like future, where only good stocks are given high-position jobs and the others are cogs in the machine. The strange thing about this whole proposal is that a system like this is already in place. Nepotism ensures what they think is superior. They say they want to wipe out disease, but really, they just want to wipe out most of us and try to beat death. Peter Thiel is not interested in getting blood transfusions with young blood for no reason. From a 2014 Vanity Fair piece, Trump delegate and Gawker bankrupter Peter Thiel is no stranger to the idea of increasing his lifespan through science. He wrote, "I stand against confiscatory taxes, totalitarian collectives, and the ideology of the inevitability of the death of every individual." On Bloomberg TV in 2014, Thiel explained that he was taking human growth hormone pills as part of his plan to live 120 years. It helps maintain muscle mass, so you're much less likely to get bone injuries and arthritis, he said. I'm looking into parabiosis stuff, which I think is really interesting. This is where they did the young blood into older mice, and they found out it had massive rejuvenating effect, he said. And so that's once again, it's one of those very odd things where people had done these studies in the 1950s and then got it dropped altogether. I think there are a lot of these things that have been strangely underexplored. End quote. Thiel's father worked for IBM his whole life and holds 12 patents. Peter got a very good U.S. education and became very rich with PayPal and Palantir. Palantir is a terrifying software company that specializes in big data analytics for the Department of Defense. It has since expanded its reach to the corporate sector with Morgan Stanley, Merck, Airbus, and Fiat Chrysler. Recently, they have forged their way into the medical industry with Babylon Health. And this is from Wikipedia. Babylon expanded into Rwanda under the Babel brand, which continues as of July 2019. In 2017, Babylon took part in an NHS 111 online pilot where its AI-powered triage chatbot was made available in some regions of London. In April 2018, it agreed to provide its artificial intelligence technology to WeChat in mainland China. Just to make it weirder, the company's name is of course derived from The Lord of the Rings, where the magical planetary or seeing stones, described as the indestructible balls of crystal used for communication and to see events into other parts of the world. Lord of the Rings nerds rule the world. Ones that may even be into, dare I say, the occult, which only means hidden knowledge, something else Julian Huxley was very much into. This will always be a key mechanism to control hidden information. They'll make sure everyone is drowning themselves in pleasure and detachment while they control the population and try to live forever, and that is transhumanism, the ultimate man versus nature narrative. None of this technology we currently use is sustainable, and now, because of weakened supply chains, semiconductors are harder to come by. Will they eventually upload everyone's consciousness into a machine? Will there be enough materials to do so? They are already building AI with all of the data we willingly feed to it on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, you name it. People have become atomized and are told to socialize less. Now to socialize less with those that have not done what the techno-fascist state wants, vaccines. Trapping you in the black cube of the internet, a technology that hits your dopamine receptors. However, the internet was always a military operation, and you have to wonder whether or not this was the ultimate vision of the technocratic futurists. I think they are overstepping the natural order of life on this planet. Breaking away from this technology and being less reliant on it is probably more key now than ever. Transhumanism may just be a silly fantasy, but if it isn't, people will be walking around with VR glasses living their augmented reality fantasies. I have only lightly touched on this topic, and there's obviously so much more to explore. It is interesting that one of the papers I found on Julian Huxley was put out by the Wellcome Trust. Their fingerprints are everywhere in the transhumanist landscape. Let us not forget the AIDS AZT scandal, as well as Whitney Webb's recent coverage of Wellcome and their involvement in the ongoing security state. I want to say the ongoing biomedical security state. From a leap towards humanity's destruction on Webb's website, Unlimited Hangout. Quote, the world's richest medical research foundation, the Wellcome Trust, has teamed up with a pair of former DARPA directors who built Silicon Valley's Skunk Works to usher in an age of nightmarish surveillance, including for babies as young as 3 months old. Fauci was also present during the AZT scandal. The world is a stage, and the actors play the same roles over and over. Don't take your eyes off of them because they're telling us exactly what they are doing. Thank you for listening.